And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of the Doing the Work podcast. As tonight, we have an Ask Us Anything episode where we answer some questions from our private assembly hall community and our followers on Twitter. I'm your host, Jeff Marlowe, here with my co-host, Kathy Amos, on Doing the Work, the newest show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering IU women's basketball. And as we do most shows, we start our show with our banner moment. Tonight's banner moment occurred yesterday when ESPN released their top 25 players for 22-23. IU's Grace Berger came in at number 17 on the ESPN list and was the only Hoosier to make the list. Mackenzie Holmes received votes, but Grace was the only player in the top 25. Opponents on the list included Caitlin Clark of Iowa at number 2, J.C. Sheldon of Ohio State at number 11, Jordan Horston of Tennessee at 15, Rakia Jackson of Tennessee at number 18, Diamond Miller from Maryland at 21, and Monica Sanano from Iowa at number 25. But congratulations to Grace on our banner moment for being part of the top 25 on ESPN's list. Our banner moment is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You are bound to find something for you or as a gift as we near holiday season. They even have a core line with no schools or teams if you have family or friends who just want a high quality sweatshirt. So whether you want only IU gear or other college teams and now NFL or nothing associated with a team, Home Field Apparel probably has something for you. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME, H-O-M-E, for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And now, here to spread her basketball acumen, it's Kathy Amos. And we're going to send it over to Kathy for the Amos angle. And if you had noticed, we got a new song from Bob Thompson that we just played for you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for that. And I totally agree with your banner moment and a secondary banner moment for Bob Thompson with the new music for our show, especially made just for Doing the Work. So if we didn't feel special enough before, I think that just adds to it. So yeah, I mean, we're almost there, right? It's Wednesday and 2 days until our exhibition game on Friday night. So hopefully those people out there listening or watching tonight have their Big Ten Plus subscription all ready to go. So we finally get to see our ladies in action on the floor Friday night. A lot of great news headlines around as well. For example, I think it came out today that Mackenzie was on Megan McGowan's top 20 returnee list for the Big Ten. So that was exciting to see. So I'm assuming Grace will be there too as she continues to reveal the rest of her top players that are returning. And the other, I think, big banner moment for us this week for the women's program is the new locker room was revealed earlier this week too, which was really cool. And Ali Patberg was the first one to sign the alumni wall. So if you're on Twitter and you haven't seen it yet, I'd encourage you to go and see some of those videos. So the other thing we're getting ramped up for the season is we had Inside IU women's basketball on Monday with Austin and Coach Morin. Had our first episode come out. So couple nuggets. I was able to listen to it today and pull out of that. And I figure we can talk about that later when we get into the heart of answering some of the questions. They kind of help maybe shed some light there. And if not, I'll throw them into as we kind of go along. So a lot of stuff going on and just excited to see them in action and see how these pieces of our puzzle start fitting together.
Yeah, and some other items of interest that I had noted down, Kathy. Mackenzie Holmes had a birthday yesterday, and wish her a happy birthday. Caitlin Peterson today was named the IU Scholar Athlete of the Month. And also kind of going back, and I know maybe we'll talk a little bit about this when we answer some of the questions, but judging by some of the questions that we saw or, in the community, I thought it was interesting that on the Inside the Hoosiers radio show that Coach Moore admitted that Grace Berger had undergone shoulder surgery over the summer. We'd heard some rumors. We'd had that question posed to us over the summer. We didn't have any real confirmation of that. And with as tight-lipped as sometimes the IU program is about their injuries, I was a little surprised how forthcoming she was in that interview with Austin about Grace's injury and stuff. And then also she mentioned that Mackenzie Holmes also had another, I would assume probably there was some scar tissue or something, would imagine that they were taking out, but she said that she was a little behind on her cardio, her conditioning. So what you, besides obviously talking about some of the other things that you're going to mention and with that, what do you think of those two things especially?
Yeah, the interesting thing for Grace was that she said what led from her shoulder surgery was for her, while she was rehabbing, to take a different look at her shot and actually retooled it a little bit, and that she actually expects Grace to be a more consistent 3-point shooter for this year for us. And that was, again, one of those lingering questions we've had since last year. We know she brought in Sarah, we know she brought in Sydney to help in particular with the 3-point shooting, but we always wondered if Grace could develop, she has that beautiful mid-range shot that no one really appreciates or has anymore, but could she develop more of a consistent long range shot? And it sounds like that might actually be the case. So that was what I really took from hers. I was really surprised about the Mackenzie news in terms of her knee. I had thought we had heard earlier during like a press conference that she said her knee was good to go. And maybe it was at that point, but in this procedure was earlier in the summer. So hopefully, she'll be able to get that cardio going and back up, but it may see maybe less playing time for Mackenzie at the beginning of the year than we might have thought due to that. And the one in particular we might be surprised is, I guess, maybe the Tennessee game is first out of the gate in terms of games where she would probably be playing heavy minutes. Maybe she might not as much as later in the year.
If it wasn't for the cardio part, I wouldn't be shocked if she doesn't play Friday night in the exhibition. But since she needs some cardio, as Coach Morin talked about, I think we'll see her. And I think somebody posed it or it wasn't necessarily a question in the community. It was more, I think the question, or maybe it was in the text messaging you and I were having with Ari about whether, hopefully Grace will be ready to go. There didn't seem to be any indication from Coach Morin that they were going to be out for any time. It's just a matter of they got work done over the summer because that was the proper time to get it done. It makes me wonder a little bit, how much of an injury did Grace play through toward the end of last year and such. So
because we did see that brace on her shoulder last year. So
that's a good point. That's an excellent point. And we knew what Mackenzie was dealing with pretty much from February on, middle of January on, that we knew she really wasn't 100%. But it'll be interesting to see. And I'm going to save a couple things. I was watching Austin and Coach Morin on the Inside the Indiana show, and I really Inside Indiana basketball, I should say, and show and really caught a couple things in there that I thought were interesting. And we'll get to those obviously when we get to the questions. Anything else you want to add in here, Kathy?
No, I took a couple other nuggets away from that interview, and if we don't get to them listening or answering our questions here, I'll throw them out there at the end as well from that interview with Austin.
Okay. Yep. So you ready for some questions?
Let's do it.
All right, hang on a second. I'm just trying to get some. If you're watching us on the YouTube live feed, we've got some new toys that we're trying to learn how to get a handle on. But our first question this week is, and I'll let you take the first crack at these. From Sean Roberts. Who do you think will draw the opposing team's best scorer night in and night out? Will we have one go-to lockdown defender, or will the coach mix and match different people on them?
I think
and the question also, and Sean was specifically referencing like a Caitlin Clark type.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. I think this is similar to a question we got when we covered the Iowa deep dive a few weeks ago. I still think it's going to be more. I don't think we're going to see one person. And I'm sure it's coming from Nicole Cardano Hillary from last year, or she seemed to be the main go-to defender. I don't think we're going to see that this year. I think that defense is going to be a very much team-oriented thing this year, which it always has been. And I just don't think we're going to have one particular person where we know she's always going to get that assignment on the best scorer, and for various reasons. But I don't see that, Jeff. But do you see anybody yet sticking out?
I think it'll be matchup dependent. Now, if it's Caitlin Clark that we're speaking about, or if it's J.C. Sheldon Thompson at Ohio State. I think you're going to see Grace get some of that at least, or the first chance at it, at least maybe earlier in the season. Maybe by the time we get to Big Ten, it won't be. I thought that was one of the things I caught, Kathy, and this may be again a good point now to kind of jump into the interview with Austin and Coach Morin from her on Monday, that she still referred to them, that she still talked about they want to be gritty, not pretty on the defensive end. So I think that answers some of the questions we've been having maybe in the offseason about what will this team's identity be. That's still going to be a defensive identity. And I think that's where you start wondering, can a Chloe Moore McNeil guard a Caitlin Clark? Can a Sarah Scalia do it for a few minutes here and there? Could a Sydney Parrish give you a possession or two? So, but I think it's all about matchups. And I think now with post players, I think that becomes obviously you're starting to look at somebody like Mac and Alyssa Geary, our transfer from Providence, as such. So with maybe a little bit more, but again, the other one I forgot to talk about in this segment and as such is Garden Jordan Garzon from Israel, our Israel player coming in from Israel. I think she is kind of an X factor here because we haven't seen her in a game yet, but everything we're hearing, at least kind of secondhand out of the rumor mill out of Bloomington, is she can guard anywhere from a 1 through 3, maybe 1 through 4.
1 through 4. Yeah. Coach Morin specifically talked about her being able, she didn't specifically say guard, but play 1 through 4 today. And Alyssa Geary, she said, again, kind of sprinkling in some from that interview as well. An interesting nugget she did say about Alyssa Geary, since you brought her up, is that she expects her to be a backup to McKenzie. And be a very athletic 5 for them. And that's, to your point, she might be the one that becomes a really big defender for us, because maybe, especially with, Mac working on her cardio, and who knows if there's still lingering effects of her knee, maybe Alyssa's just a little more athletic. And so if the other team does have a more athletic big, maybe she gets more of that assignment too. So I think you're right, though. It's going to be very matchup dependent and depends on who's your best player on that team, right?
I believe so. I really do. Yeah. Now, like I said, if it's Caitlin Clark, if it's JC Sheldon, a Taylor Mikesell, whoever might be hot for Ohio State, those kind of guards, I think Grace is going to get some of that assignment. And I think you want Grace Berger to have that a little bit. I think you want your leader, your super senior leader, to feel like they can take on that task. And also, Kathy, I'll ask you about this as well. What do you think about the comment that she made about Alyssa Geary maybe being more of a 3-point shooter than they've, almost more, maybe not quite Alexa Golbe, but probably in that mold, and and then maybe I'd be interested. Can you play? You talked about it. She mentioned being a backup, but if she is a backup 5, she really might bring a real dynamic if she can stretch the floor.
Yeah, that was really interesting, wasn't it? Because, and I think that's why in my head, if we, start talking about starters again, I'm kind of shifting away from Alyssa being a starter now that she said this is the second time I've heard her in interviews this week talk about Alyssa in that kind of backup realm. But in my mind, I'd always thinking she was being more of an Alexa Golbe and would play alongside McKenzie because she would be able to stretch that floor because she was more athletic and a little more mobile. But, Coach Morin referred to her as a 6'4", and she's every bit of her 6'4". So, she's probably maybe just a little bigger than I was anticipating in my brain, not seeing much of her except for clips that I could find on YouTube. So, yeah, excited to see what they look like. And that doesn't mean just because if she's more of a backup and not a starter, that doesn't mean she's not going to be out there with McKenzie if, we want to go a little bigger too. So.
And you talked about, I think you even mentioned, but to kind of put them together, an athletic all of 6'4" is what Terry basically said. I mean, she didn't say it that way, but she said she's very athletic and all of 6'4". So if you put the two together, man, that gives you some. And I think that's one thing, Kathy, let's kind of stay with this a little bit. We didn't really have a specific question about the starters, but I think maybe Coach Morin gave us a little bit of insight more. I think you're going to see, I'll come around to this, and you've been saying this really since the summertime. I will be very shocked if Chloe Moore McNeil is not in the starting lineup on Friday, and that Alyssa Geary basically comes in as like the 6th or 7th man, or at least the first big off the bench.
Yeah, I think so too. After listening to Coach Morin from her Monday show, I'm even more convinced now that Chloe is going to be the starter, and Alyssa's probably going to be coming off of the bench now. So which means that I think Sydney's probably going to get that other starting spot as well. So I think we'll probably see a little bit smaller lineup than what I was originally anticipating, mainly again, because I thought Alyssa and Mackenzie would be playing more side by side. But yeah, I mean, we had heard it in media days. We've heard it now with Austin. Coach Morin has said nothing but she has high expectations for Chloe Moore McNeil, and that Chloe has just been working her tail off. And Chloe, too, back to the question that we are asked, she's specifically said that the thing she really wants to make sure she's improving on is not just focusing on offense, but being that, defensive player. And we saw that, coming a little bit on the court last year already. So I'm really excited to see what kind of lineups we can have. Which might lead us into our second question too, actually.
Yeah, so let's go to our second question. And this comes from Quang. It's kind of a two-part question. Have you heard any more about Coach Morin using more depth? Any new info about Yarden Garzon? And of the transfers, which is most likely to contribute a lot? So Kathy, I'll let you tackle that first.
Yeah, so a lot of questions going on here. So I think we definitely know more about Coach Morin using depth now than we did just 3 days ago. So she talked with, again, back to her interview with Austin, just of a lot of players getting time. And the thing that surprised me is that, one, she mentioned Yarden Garzon, which didn't surprise me, one of her freshmen, but she talked about two of the other freshmen as well, being a very big surprise. I can't remember which one now. I think it might have been maybe Lexi being able to play point guard. Yeah. So I think, and she mentioned, speaking of point guard, that they will probably do more of a point guard committee, that you'll see Grace at the point, that you may see Yarden at the point, that even Sarah would be playing point from time to time, and she threw out a whole bunch of names, but she mentioned a long list of players that she expects to contribute. I counted at least 8 different names that she threw out there, which to me is a perfect amount of rotation if that's what we're targeting towards the end of the year. So have we heard more about depth? I absolutely think that interview with Coach Morin earlier this week on Monday very much led to us saying, yes, I think she's very much willing to play more players. And she specifically said, and it's great because then we can give Grace more time and we don't have to rely on them all being workhorses like we did last year, playing 38, 39 minutes. So I really think we're going to see a bigger rotation this year. How about you?
And I think that's one of those where I kind of stick with this about the depth and such. So you've got I was really interested because the way I took that comment from her was that Grace is going to play the point quite a bit. That was kind of and maybe that was just the way I heard it.
Maybe different in interpretation. Yeah,
a little different interpretation. But she did mention it will be a committee. You won't have just one point guard all the time.
Right.
But I've kind of been thinking, I've said this kind of since all season, I would not be surprised if you see Grace Berger almost like an old fashioned point forward type that the Bucks used to run with Paul Pressey back in the day. You see a little bit in the NBA game a little bit today. Giannis will sometimes run a little point action. But I think the depth wise, what I want to see early in the season, Kathy, I want to see us to get up to 10. We talked kind of about, Mac, Grace, Sydney, I'm going Sarah as our 4 starters, and then Chloe Moore McNeil sounds like she's going to be our 5th. Then you got Alyssa Geary. Then you're going to have Yarden Garzon. Those are 7. And then I think you got to get Caitlin Peterson in the mix a little bit and find out, if anything, you find out what you got with Caitlin. And then and then you got Keandra Brown. Now, at least that I can get to 9 with that. And and like you said, she talked about Lexi Bargesser playing the point, which did surprise me a little bit because everybody's been kind of assuming the freshmen outside of Yarden weren't going to get much time.
Yeah.
But she seemed to have some confidence. And I thought maybe they might be a little bit cautious with Bargesser because the few pictures we've seen of her out of preseason practice, she has a pretty good sized brace on. This is a girl who injured her knee at the very beginning of this last high school season and came back and ran track in the spring. But yeah, I didn't catch the other freshman she mentioned, but I would imagine it was probably Lily Meister.
Yes, it was Lily. That was it. So, the interesting thing of we're talking about all the people she talked about. You mentioned Caitlin Peterson. I've yet to hear Coach Morin really talk about her. And I was talking to my husband about the interview earlier today. as we were sitting together, and I said, the interesting thing, we always want to talk about what she did say. And one thing that she didn't say, and I haven't heard her say, is anything about Caitlin. And it makes me pause and wonder if maybe she's not coming along as much this summer as we were hoping to see that improvement. So she's a wild card for me right now, because I thought really she showed some flashes for us last year. And I know she was inconsistent, to be expected, but I was thinking she might get a little more playing time, but now I'm starting to wonder if she will or not.
Well, that's one of the ones where you think maybe did a couple of the transfer ins, like a Parrish and a Scalia, take some time, possibly take some time away from her. The other one that
now some of some and
obviously with Mac being back, and she'll be healthy. I mean, we know she's got to get her cardio, her conditioning back. But an Alyssa Geary and a Garzon possibly playing a 1 through a 4. We haven't heard much about Keandra Brown in the offseason.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, she's been, we've seen her in videos and that, and, and like a Hoosier Hysteria. And I think maybe she's maybe gotten into a little better shape that might improve some of that. She definitely needs to work on her footwork from last year. So I'm curious about her too. Especially if, Alyssa's meant to be the backup to Mackenzie. I wonder where that leaves Keandra. So, it's a good problem to have.
It is, and that's what you want. If you have depth, if you have quality depth, that is a good problem to have. You hit the nail on the head there. And then we're kind of the last part of Quank's question, Kathy. I'll give you. I think we're both going to have the same answer here. But of the transfers, which is most likely to contribute a lot?
My first inclination at this is to go with Sarah. I think Sarah, with her 3-point shot, and especially, again, a comment, because that's all we have right now to read way too much into, our comments from Coach during any of her media availability or interviews. Her comments of Sarah really being willing to get down and dirty on defense. I think she's going to get a lot of playing time and a lot of run. And seeing her light it up on, the 3-point contest. Again, I get it. It's not being defended. It's not game. It's a catch and shoot situation, or not a catch and shoot situation, rather. I get all that, but we know she can light it up because we saw her do it against us last year, and against almost all of the other teams in the Big Ten. So I think she probably, when you're talking contributing, if you're talking points, especially, I think Sarah is probably going to be our bigger contributor.
My inclination is to agree with that. I thought it was interesting what she talked about, Sarah, on with the show with Austin on Monday, about how it was different coaching her as compared to scouting her. I mean, they knew some of the things she could do, but they were scouting her, and it was kind of when you're scouting their team, you're breaking them down, obviously, but you're not looking at the little things. You're not looking to see how hard they work and things. And so I took away some of those things in that interview with Austin on Monday about just how surprised they were that she was willing, because this is a kid that's been known as an offensive player, how willing she was to get down and get, as Coach said, get gritty, not pretty, so on the defensive end. I obviously, in my opinion, Kathy, I'll kind of throw it back to you as well on this to see what you think. I think it comes down to basically to Scalia or Parrish as who's going to be the bigger contributor on of the transfers. But I thought an interesting comment she made about Sydney Parrish, that she referred to Sydney as a fixer, that somebody who kind of can get people in the right spot. And even though she's a transfer and coming in and kind of new to the program, but as Terry said, Coach Moran said, she has a very high IQ, basketball IQ, and I'm sure as book smart too. But I think Coach Moran was talking about basketball IQ with that, but just how she can kind of see what's going and be able to get them into a flow, get them into a play, or on the defensive end, be able to get people where they're supposed to be, or cover for somebody who's gotten beat or lost. So what did you think about that comment?
Yeah. That was really interesting to me as well. And she referred to Yarden Garzon too as one of the highest basketball IQ players on the team. So I'm really intrigued by that. I think I'm just even more excited about the team coming into this. So after her interview, I do want to say, somebody in our chat mentioned Sean, my husband, said, a deeper team will mean less playing time. And that's something that Austin also asked Coach Moran about in the interview with her. And he said, how do you do that? And he said, and specifically not so much about the playing time being a deeper team, but because women have 14 scholarship players, or up to 15, we have 14. And how do you manage that? Because clearly with that many people on a team, not everyone's going to get playing time. And she said, we have always had that in women's basketball, and for her, it's just a matter of being open and honest with all the players. So I'm sure, the players know what's coming in to this season in terms of, what Keandra Brown knows what her role is supposed to be, and Caitlin Peterson knows what her role is supposed to be. So I think that Coach Morin seems to have done a really good job managing all of that.
And I don't know exactly, even after coaching 25 years, I'm not sure how you really measure it, Kathy, but you know it when you kind of see it, or especially if you're watching somebody play often enough, like if you're out recruiting somebody as a high school kid, or you're watching in practice, you'll catch it pretty quickly. But it makes me wonder how much of that is something that's an intangible this staff looks for when they are recruiting, because you kind of look at the players we have. To me, I mean, I've never heard Coach Morin come right out saying she may have it. I just haven't heard it. But talking with Grace, you can tell she's got a high basketball IQ.
Yeah.
She mentioned Yarden. She mentioned Sydney Parrish. She didn't say it so much about Alyssa Geary, but somebody that is, you got the feeling that they brought her in because of her ability to do certain things and be able to adapt. So again, I wonder if that's just one of those things that she's really looking for. Yes, she wants athleticism. Yes, she wants kids who can put the ball in the basket. She wants kids who are going to get down and gritty on the defensive end. But I wonder if one of those things that she kind of checks a box for, if there's a question between a couple kids, if she's like, I want that kid with the high basketball IQ. It makes me, I would love to be able to ask her that question.
Yeah, I think so too. That'd be great.
All right. I forgot to put this question in the banner, Kathy, so I will have to put this away here. But from Gary Crawford, and you're probably the best one to answer this.
Yes.
Can we listen to games over the internet, and how?
Yes, there are two ways that I know of. One is through TuneIn. You can actually listen to, I think it's the 105.1. I'll look it up quick just to make sure, but you can stream the radio station out of Bloomington. It's like a country station that has all the football games, the men's basketball game, and the women's basketball games, and you can hear women there. The other way you can listen to it is if you download the Indiana University app. There is an app, in case you didn't know. So if you've ever bought tickets from Indiana University, you get your tickets electronically on this app. Down at the bottom, there's a section called audio. That's where, for example, I went and listened to the interview with Terry Morin and Austin from earlier this week. But they have all of the games actually archived, but you can also listen live to the games through that app as well. And those, while I am thinking about it, I will look up exactly what radio station you can get through TuneIn, TUNE. And then
I forget the number, but it's one something. It's like
105.1.
Yeah, it's like
WHCC out of Bloomington. Yeah. And they have both, again, the men and the women's games, and football if you want to stream a football game audio.
And Gary, I don't listen to too many on the radio. I hate hunting for it on TuneIn. Kathy's more of the expert on this. She even will be able to sync it up to where she gets Austin with the video. She'll turn her volume on the TV down, and she'll sync it so Austin and the game on the video feed are pretty much in sync. And I give her kudos for that, because I'm not sure I could figure out how to get that done. So I mute
my TV, and then I figured out the only time it doesn't work is if the TV is way behind the audio, because I can pause my TV to let the audio catch up, but I can't the other way. But yes, I will stream the audio feed and mute the television commentators, and I do that for both men and women's basketball, because most of the time I can't stand the TV commentators. So I'd much rather listen to Fish or to Austin.
And by the way, shout out to one of our guests we had on earlier this offseason, Amanda Foster. She did a great job on the BTN Plus telecast with the men's exhibition the other day. I haven't seen who's doing the women's broadcast on Friday night on BTN Plus, but kudos, shout out to Amanda, who we've had on here before, and hopefully we'll have on again as we go throughout the season. So our final question, Kathy, and I'll let you again, I'll give it to you first. From Phil Samuels, can the women win their last road game of the season? And when I saw this, I was assuming Phil meant the last regular season game in Iowa, because technically after that, everything becomes a neutral game in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. So, yes. But if he means the last game at Iowa, I'll give you the first shot at that.
I'm never going to say no, that they can't, because otherwise why bother playing the games? I think there's always a chance, and gosh, there's so much basketball and growth and things to happen between now and February. Do I think it's going to be their toughest game? 100%. 100%. I think this is probably going to be their toughest challenge this year, even more so than going down to Tennessee, to be honest with you. I think we've talked about it a number of times on here. The Iowa program is, outpacing the women's program is outpacing the men's in terms of season tickets. They sold out at least 3 games last year during their season towards the end of the year. And I think they're on pace to sell out probably a number of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one's sold out by the time they get there as well. So can they win it? Absolutely they can. It's going to be a tough road to, pardon the pun, to drive down though. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I will say this: it will be a very hostile environment. If it comes down, especially that game's for a share or an outright Big Ten title for either team, it will be a very hostile environment in Iowa City. Very little red will be in the stands that night.
At least 2 shirts.
But at least 2. Sean and Kathy are going to be there. But I think this is also, though, we're a veteran team. Even though we have 7 new people, you look at this core group; they're vets. It's Grace Berger, it's Mackenzie Holmes, it's Sydney Parrish, it's Sarah Scalia, it's Alyssa Geary. They should not have any fear about going into a road environment with something on the line. That doesn't mean they're going to win. I agree with Kathy. It'll be a tough game, but I definitely think, to answer Phil's question, I think they can win that game and get, and hopefully I hopefully will be for a Big Ten title, and I think it will be. I think that game is going to be what Big Ten Conference is hoping for, is that last game of the year on Sunday in February, last Sunday in February, is going to be for somebody to get a share or an outright Big Ten title. Wouldn't it be awesome if they were both tied coming in? Whoever wins gets the number 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. But if you're talking about the Big Ten tournament, you're talking more neutral games. I think they can win the Big Ten tournament again. Where they seed at last year. Yeah. A seeding becomes such a big thing in the Big Ten tournament, and then it becomes a little bit about matchups. And then you get to the NCAA tournament. That's all about matchups. Even on the women's side, how far you can go is determined by where you seed and who gets slotted into your regional. And last year IU could have been an Elite 8 team again, but they got slotted with UConn. If they're slotted with somebody else, they could have been very much in the Elite 8 again. It's all about matchups and such like that. But I definitely think they can win that last game, the last true road game in Iowa City. So, Kathy, you got anything you want to add? You watched that episode with or the show with Coach Morin and Austin. Maybe I kind of went through and caught bits and pieces of it. Fast forward, anything that we haven't talked about that you want to add in here?
No, I think we've covered on it. I'm looking here at my notes, and I think we covered all of it. I mean, the biggest one's Grace's shoulder and a 3-point, Mackenzie's knee and that her cardio is behind, Alyssa Geary being max backup. The difference, it's interesting, we interpreted her point guard comments as different. I agree. She said Grace would definitely be playing it. I just thought she meant there would probably be a lot more people playing point than maybe we've historically seen. Yeah. She talked a lot about Yarden playing anywhere from 1 through 4, and she's really coming along, and her high expectations for Chloe. So those are the big nuggets I took away. So I think we talked about all of them.
All right. Yeah. So time for lingering questions. Kathy, is there a lingering question as we head into the exhibition game on Friday and then the very first game that will count in the standings on Tuesday? Any lingering questions you have? Yeah,
against Vermont. My lingering question now, as I am questioning, which we already talked about, was Mackenzie. Now, how much she will be in game shape by the time we really need her to be in game shape? Will we really quick with that Tennessee game, right? Like, is that the 4 games in? Yeah. Or 3 games in if you don't count the exhibition. So 3 games in or at Tennessee. That's my biggest question right now. And if she's not, and she's, not quite ready to play as many minutes as maybe we would like to see from her, if Alyssa really can come in and be that backup that we need, and what kind of dynamics that's going to show for us. So that's probably my biggest lingering question on my brain right now.
And for me, the lingering question going into the exhibition against Kentucky Wesleyan on Friday and Vermont, the first game on Tuesday, I want to see how far we go on the bench. In these 2 games, especially in the exhibition, I won't be shocked to see us get to 11 or 12. But against Vermont, can we at least get to 10? And I don't want 5. I'm not looking for the hockey line substitution here or anything, 5 for 5. But I would like to see 10 kids get at least 7+ minutes. And I want to see us develop a little something, because I felt like and I think Coach Morton even said that. I keep wanting to Carberry first. Coach Morton even said this on the show with Austin. She admitted, and I think she knew this, and she maybe even said a little bit last year, they got worn down, not only because of the schedule, but they just didn't play very many kids. And it caught up with them as they got into that schedule where they had to play 6 games in 12 days and then move into the tournament. So, so I think she knows now, but sometimes that's hard. Having been there as a coach, you may come into the season going, I'm going to get 10 kids in tonight and I'm going to get them 7+ minutes. But then, you kind of get into the heat of the moment in the play. And all of a sudden it's like, now come Big Ten season, you get that rotation down to 8 where you're playing 8 kids, 10+ minutes. I'm fine. That's good depth. 9 kids, 9 minutes plus. That's good depth. I don't expect them to go 10 or 11 deep once the Big Ten season gets here, except unless they get a situation where they get a blowout against one of the teams toward the bottom of the conference. And then that's, what we always used to call the plus 20 or minus 20 kid. You're up 20 or down 20. But, but that's what I want to see. That's my lingering question. Can she at least build some depth in these first few games?
Yeah, that's a great point too. So, and not just that, but to your point, like if you get to a nice steady 8-person rotation by the time you get into the meat of your schedule here in Big Ten play, I would be ecstatic to see that over last year where we basically had 6 players. So adding even just 2 more would be really fantastic growth, I think, for us.
And at times you felt like it was 5.5.
Right. Yes.
It really did. And the other thing I'll save this I'm going to kind of preview this lingering question. I'll be interested to see. Tennessee will probably have a pretty good crowd in a couple of weeks for that game. I'll be interested to see how somebody like Yarden Garzon reacts to that type of environment. Because even though she's played a little bit of professional ball in Israel, I doubt the crowds have been as big as she's going to see down in Knoxville.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet not.
And so and I'm hoping our crowds show up here early as well. Plus, I'm sure when we get in some of the higher profile games, we'll have some good crowds. I'd really be interested if the university would release some of the ticket numbers, but I haven't at least seen anything about ticket numbers so far from the university.
No, just that they're changing the policy of metal detectors and what purses women can bring in, or men for that matter too.
If you didn't see that today, that's a great point Kathy brings up. If you plan on going to the game Friday night or Tuesday night, or even games in the future, the women now also will have the clear bag policy in effect. So it's been in effect for the men's basketball and the football games for a while, but I can't remember the size, but everybody kind of, if you've been to probably like, it's about this big. It's not really very big. And but it's got to be a clear bag if you want to bring it inside. So let people know that as we go along. So, couple programming notes. Our next show will be next Wednesday on the 9th. We will recap the season opener against Vermont and also the exhibition game from Friday night against Kentucky Wesleyan. We're not going to be doing any post-game shows live after those 2 games. We thought we'd just try to recap those a little bit. And we will, I think right now, Kathy and I have been talking about the Tennessee game being our first live post-game show after that game. If you haven't checked out our Twitter feed at Doing the Work, we have our own Twitter feed. It's at DTWIUWBB, which is Doing the Work IU Women's Basketball. If you search for us on Twitter, Doing the Work, you should be able to find us pretty easily on Twitter, or you can check out the Assembly Call community page as well. Also, if you follow us on Twitter or the community, I've been trying to update on the former IU players who are playing overseas, and we have several players playing. Alexa Golbe had her first start the other day for her Spanish team. Nikki Cardano-Hillary has been getting some decent playing time. She's been averaging, I would say, probably about 8 to 12 minutes a game. The one that really is playing well right now is Amanda Cahill, who was just named the Player of the Week in Luxembourg. She's averaging, I think, 25 a game and is leading the league over in Luxembourg, I believe, in scoring at this point. They've only played a handful of games, and then Tyra Buss is off to a good start in Lithuania. Yeah. So as well. Jory Davis is playing in Italy as well. So AC Radio is scheduled for their regular postgame show tomorrow night after the men's exhibition against St. Francis, and that's St. Francis out of Fort Wayne. In fact, one of the players on that team is Damon Bailey's son, who will be playing in Assembly Hall against IU in the exhibition. By the way, Kathy, did you see that? I know this isn't the men's show, but just notice Huntington was in yesterday. They were going down, I think, Evansville for a scrimmage tonight, and they stopped in yesterday at Assembly Hall and played. Huntington, coached by former Hoosier Steve Alford's son, Corey. So,
Oh, really?
So interesting how there's some real dynamics here as well. Also, be sure to catch or subscribe to the next episode of Crimson Cast. They're part of our Back Home network. And so it's time for last call, and we're going to throw it over to Kathy for her thoughts that she wants to leave us on tonight.
Yeah, I think just a couple things real quick, Jeff. For me, I'm excited again. I know it's an exhibition Friday night, but it's still basketball. It's time to see how some of these puzzle pieces that we've been talking about now for months are going to start fitting together. And I think that is still our biggest lingering question is so many new faces onto the team. How will they gel together? And, we might see them mix and match and start doing a lot of things. We'll start seeing maybe hopefully quite a bit of depth on Friday. So encourage all of our listeners and followers out there. If you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to Big Ten Plus, even just for a couple of months. I know that the men only have a couple of games on there, but the women will have quite a few. And this is just going to be an exciting team to watch. And I don't think you'll regret it. I mean, if you're listening to us, then hopefully you've already got a Big Ten Plus subscription. I know sometimes the broadcast is not the best produced, but I think they're getting better. And if it's any indication of how the men's podcast was, as you mentioned with Amanda Foster, if it's going to be more like that, I was pretty pleased with it, and I hope to see more of that. So excited to see that. And then the first game against Vermont on Tuesday, that really counts for something. On a personal note, I do want to just say thanks to a lot of people I know. Last week on Assembly Call, they mentioned my husband's going through some health issues right now, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me privately or even publicly and wish us, a lot of happy thoughts. So I appreciate all that. Keep it coming. We're heading down a good road with him. It's going to be a pretty long one for us to get through, but super appreciate that. I've had a lot of great letters and phone call or texts and everything, and even got a great little gift basket from the Assembly Call guys, from Jared and Coach and stuff. So all of that is really appreciated, and just want to know, give you a quick update. He is doing pretty good, as all things considered. He feels great, actually. So it's just a matter of working through this. So thanks to everyone for all of your support. Really much appreciate it.
And we're glad to hear all the good news with Sean and for you as well. And just goes to show you how great our community is, that so many of you have reached out to Kathy and Sean and send along positive vibes and the thoughts and the prayers. So again, just amazing what our community has become and how much it cares about each other inside the community. For me, my kind of last call thought here is I'm with Kathy. I'm really looking forward to seeing games start. I'm ready to see kids out on the floor playing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the puzzle starting to fit together, the puzzle pieces starting to fit together as we get going forward toward Tennessee, North Carolina, and then obviously into the Big Ten season. I'm really excited about this season, and I hope you guys are too. And we want to thank all the workaholics who show up every week or so to watch us in here on YouTube. And for those of you who listen on the podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast feed from, don't forget we now have our own feed, the Doing the Work podcast feed. So you can search for us and it'll come up there rather than under the Assembly Call feed. And just want to thank everybody, the sponsors and everybody, or Home Field Apparel is one of our sponsors, and thank everybody for that. So I'm looking forward to it. Kathy, been a great show.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Next time we'll have real basketball to talk about, not just speculation.
Yeah, we'll have real basketball to talk about. We can nitpick all the things that we thought Coach Warren should be doing.
Because
because that's what we're here for.
That's right. And you have room to say that. I coached my son when he was like in 5th grade once. So I don't know if I mind count a whole lot.
I got you. So if you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Assembly Call. Also, make sure you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. It comes out every Sunday, and after every men's basketball game, we want to shout out to Ari. He is does a lot of our background work and getting everything uploaded into the podcast feeds and everything. And he does a lot of the work on the newsletter. So if you want some of that, subscribe to that you can join for free today at assemblycall.com. That's join.assemblycall.com, and that's where you can start accessing the newsletter. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our new logo. As you can see, if you're watching the YouTube feed, you see it in our upper right-hand corner. And as we mentioned earlier, also a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our new music that you heard for the first time. We'll use it kind of here for our outro here in a few seconds, but thanks, Bob, for that. We really appreciate it. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again soon. Until then, keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Awesome. That was perfect.
That is perfect. Yeah, I like Bob's work, So, but
yeah, he does a good job.
He does a great job. You're right, and such. But it's kind of neat to feel like we're getting kind of our own stuff, and yes, thanks to Jared and everybody who has made that possible for us, all the people in the Back Home Network. So, yeah, as we've mentioned before. So, Workaholics, thank you guys for being here tonight. We tried to keep it under an hour tonight.
Yeah, we did.
And so far, we're doing pretty good. Thanks to everybody who provided questions. Quang and Phil and Gary and Sean, who provided questions for us tonight. Appreciate all that. We'll be back next week. So we'll see everybody then.
And talk real basketball.
Talk real basketball.
Great. All right. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.